Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Monir Al-Azzouzi from easymedicaldevice.com. And today we will talk about IVDR or In-Vitro Diagnostic Regulation. And for that, I invited a guest, and it's Andreas Stange from TÜV SÜD. So he's the Vice President of TÜV SÜD, and he will help us to go through this regulation and to help companies to understand what they should do to be ready for that. So welcome, Andreas, to the podcast.
Yes, hello, Monia. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk here.
Great. So thank you for you to accepting the invitation. So Andreas, so can you introduce yourself in a few words for the audience?
Yes. So I'm with TÜV SÜD for almost 20 years in the medical devices business, and my current function is I'm part of the management board of the medical health services, and within this management board, I'm responsible for the in vitro diagnostic devices field. And as that, of course, I'm closely involved in the preparations for the new IVD regulation in Europe.
Great. So I think the best SME we have here for that topic, which is, I think, also a difficult topic. So a lot of people are asking mainly what are the differences between the previous version, which is the IVDD, so with the directive, and the IVDR. So can you help us to list a bit of the major differences between those two regulations or those two legislations?
That's right. You corrected yourself. These are not two regulations. We come from the IVDD. This is a directive, and we move over to the IVDR, which is a regulation. There's an important legal difference in these two legislations. A directive needs to be is issued on the European level, but needs to be then transposed into national law by each of the single member states, currently 28 member states.
Okay.
The regulation now is a law which becomes a law immediately to all EU member states at once. So this additional transposition step into national law is not necessary anymore, and that makes a much better, more harmonized and streamlined approach and applications throughout all European countries. And that is one of leading to one of the differences, the general oversight over both notified bodies as well as manufacturers is under the new regulation much more stricter and much more tighter as it compared to the directive. That is the same pattern we see also with the medical devices regulations versus medical devices directives. For the IVD regulation, however, there's one big difference when we compare with the medical devices regulation, and that is also reflected then in the longer transition period. That is that the devices which fall now under the regulation and which will need to have a notified body within the conformity assessment process, this will roughly increase to 85%, maybe 90%. So that means a large number of devices which can currently be placed by the manufacturer under the so-called sales declaration will in future need to have a notified body involved in the conformity assessment process. Another difference is that devices are the scope, so the definition of what falls under this regulation is increased. We have, of course, a lot of more, technological development has proceeded. We have a lot of new type of devices like software devices. We have devices provided through Internet Society. All these things fall under the regulation as well.
So it's the same as the MDR. The MDR also included more devices or more scope because of new technologies, new items that come in the market, and maybe also history where they see that some topics, some devices were not included. So the same for IVDR.
Exactly.
So maybe they are looking at what happened on the market or history, and they say this should be now included inside the regulation.
Exactly. One other difference is that currently we come from a list-based classification. So we have lists, list A, list B, which define, okay, what needs to be done with a certain device, to a rule-based system. So we have from now on a number of rules which are risk-based, and these rules define whether these devices fall now into the highest risk class, which is D, into the lower risk class, C, or B, or even A.
So here it's really matching the MDR in that case, because in the MDR there was no list-based devices. It was really a class like class 1, 2A, 2B, and 3. And here we are really making the same method, if I can say, for IVDs now.
Yes. So right now, exactly. So now we have a rule-based, and that is very much aligned also with the rules found under the Global Harmonization Task Force. So there's much more international alignment now with such rules. As a result of that, we have some devices, or a lot of devices, being up-classified. So devices which are currently now self-declared, they can be placed on the market by the manufacturer without any involvement of a notified body, as I explained before. We have other devices which are found now maybe in list A or in list B, which will then be reclassified into another risk class. So this will change. We have then similar, like under the MDR as well, we have the introduction of European databases, the UNAMED database, which will also be used for the IVDs. We have also the introduction of new labels, the UDIs, which will increase traceability and transparency. And also similar to the MDR, we do have much stricter post-market surveillance requirements. We have a little bit of stricter requirements concerning the vigilance reporting and so on and so forth, incidents reporting. And also we have in line again with the MDR much more stricter requirements for the economic operators. These are the manufacturers, the authorized representatives for those manufacturers who are located outside the EU 28 or 27 maybe in future, and also importers and distributors. These are, so to say, the major changes. We have currently 3 years transition period remaining. The full application will happen then in May 2022, and the last remaining IVDD certificates will become invalid in May 2024. So from now on in exactly 5 years.
So great. So first we have the go live. So as you say, it's May 26, 2022, which is 2 years after the MDR. So it means that companies have more time, if I can say, to be complying with this regulation. But what are now, if the companies have now to prepare for this regulation? So what should they do now, or what is exactly the challenges that they have in front of them?
Right. So the biggest challenge is, I think, for those companies who have not yet worked with a notified body. Look, I mean, if these companies have placed their devices or are placing currently their devices on the market with a self-declaration, that means, okay, legally, of course, they have to have technical documentation there. They need to have a quality management system. But in the end, they never had this independent second pair of eyes looking at their system, looking at their technical documentation. And this will come then in future by introduction of, by involvement of a notified body. And this may be quite a challenge to understand, okay, does this technical documentation withstand a critical review from an independent party? That is, I think, a key challenge for those manufacturers who have not yet had such a involvement of a notified body.
Because the selecting a notified body, having to pass all the conformity assessment, the audits and everything is really new for, as you've said, many 80%, if I can say, of the IVD manufacturers. So it's something they will have to learn, they will have to understand first, and also, to know exactly how the process is working for them, which is something that can be difficult.
Well, we estimate that 80% of the devices in future need a notified body. Whether this is 80% of the manufacturers, I don't know, but okay. It is surely a larger number of manufacturers. That is correct.
Okay.
The second thing is that, it is a new regulation. It is completely reset. So it's not that there's any kind of grandfathering or something possible. So every device, any device, which is continued placed on the market in the EU, need to have a new certificate from one point or another. And so that is a huge workload for those manufacturers who have already many devices on the market and who all need to update not only the technical documentation, they need to update their quality management system, they need to see that all these additional requirements in terms of documentation, for example, for performance requirements, clinical data, and so on and so forth, that all this is updated. And that is a huge task, especially for those, who have a broad portfolio. And that is one of the key things to think about. Okay, where to start, with which devices do we start, where maybe you can use this additional transition period of 2 years you might have. So that is one of the first decisions a manufacturer should do, so to say, start with a portfolio analysis, see, okay, what is the future classification? Do I have actually, what is the gap I need to fulfill in order to reach the new requirements? And then does it actually make economic sense? I mean, what is the cost involved? Do I have enough sales, maybe even in the EU or in other markets which are also relying on EC certifications? And then starting to do the work.
Yeah, and I suppose there is also not only EU manufacturers, there is also manufacturers outside of EU that have now to comply to this regulation. So they have to understand, because as maybe they are selling in other markets, so it's something that can be really difficult for them to understand when before it was self-certified, and now they have to follow a complete different path. So does this can be difficult for them to follow, to reach the date, and then to have some disruption on the market? Is it a possibility?
Well, I mean, we have currently the assessment and the notification process of notified bodies is still ongoing. So we have yet no notified body being notified to the IVDR. This will happen eventually in the midterm future. Also, of course, TÜV SÜD is in the moment in the process of getting there. However, we know that the number of notified bodies will most likely not reach the same number we have today under IVDD. As we have learned before, the pure amount of work is significantly increasing for the notified bodies. So we do expect significant bottlenecks in the near future, so that is something where manufacturers and manufacturers organizations, as well as notified bodies, of course, are concerned So, and we urge everybody to take the preparations for that very seriously and to really start as early as possible. And well, if you have not yet started now, you're already very, very late. And I can really ask you seriously to really look at it as soon as possible and think about how you're going to deal with it.
So as you mentioned, so there will be less notified bodies. I suppose the same number of manufacturers with more or workload. So as you mentioned, bottleneck is nearly for sure happening. So is there something like they can work on now as a strategy to be like ahead of competition, because the only thing is gap assessment and working with some consultants is a good strategy. But is there something like there is a trick or something that they can already start now and maybe that will put them ahead of competition?
Well, I mean, first of all, a quality management system needs to be established in any way. So if you as a manufacturer do not have that yet, like a typical is the ISO 13485, this is the first thing to do. It is not per se a requirement to have an ISO 13485 certificate, but it is the method of choice, because the 13485 will be also harmonized under the IVDR in future, and it is the first step to get in a third party, look at your quality management system, get this running, and at the same time, of course, prepare then the technical files for the devices.
So it's great. I think it's a good point. The quality management system is something that is sometimes missed, because they think, we just need to have a technical file and everything. But true that the regulation is also asking for a quality management system, and going for the ISO 13485 is a good choice, because mainly it's one of the well-known quality management system. And I think having that first is really the right step to do. So thank you for that.
Right.
So, Andreas, is there something else you want to say to the audience, or is there some other topic?
Well, I think if you're listening, or if you're searching for information, then that is the first step you have to do. You have to, of course, inform yourself. You have to stay in touch. I recommend also to get in touch with notified bodies. Maybe in the process first to obtain a 13485 certificate if you do not have that, but just to start communication with them and to understand their approach and understand what they are looking for. As long as notified bodies are not yet notified, it will be not possible for them to talk concretely about specific devices, about specific solutions. Anyway, they cannot give you any recommendations as such, because we are of course not allowed to consult. But it gives you an idea how things will run in future, and then just prepare yourself as good as possible in order to be ready as early as possible, and then to submit your documentation to the notified body of your choice. To start the conformity assessment as soon as you can.
No, it's great. Yeah, starting the communication of the notified body, I think, is key. And as you mentioned, even if they are not notified, they are not accredited now, so that the start of discussion can be maybe also a good strategy to select the right one for them. Because I think I suppose there will be some notified bodies that will be really specialized on some products, and some others that don't know those products. So also looking at which one can help them, because they know the product that they are manufacturing is also something that they have to do ahead and not wait for the date of the May 2022 to start to think about that.
Right, exactly. When it comes to the scope of notified bodies, it is one thing is of course important is their capacity. How much manpower do they actually have? Do they have enough capacity to deal with you? Secondly, the scope. Can they actually deal with the risk class of your devices. That is something you should ask also from the beginning, especially if you have maybe a little bit more exotic technology or something like that. Yeah, and then, get a feel how they work, what is the attitude, and whether you like to continue with them or not.
That's great. I think it's great. Okay, Andreas, so is there, how people can contact you or follow you on the social media?
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn. I guess this clip will also be found on LinkedIn, so you can find me there, contact me there, and we can take it from there. I'm very happy if people come to us and ask questions. Very welcome.
Great. So thank you, Andreas. Thank you for your help. Thank you for all the knowledge that you are providing. And I hope this will be really helpful for all those people that are looking for support. So I will put everything on the show notes on how to contact Andreas. And if you have some questions, you can directly contact him. So Andreas, thank you very much. And I wish you a nice day.
Yeah, you're welcome.